tonight, let's do a little meditation. And this is called, What is the I? Okay? We want to discover what is the self that we're so attached to. Because this is our challenge. If we're going to die peacefully, we have to loosen our attachment to this self. In order to loosen our attachment to the self, we need to know what is the self? What is the I? Okay? So, let's do a little meditation on what is the I. Lights, please. So we want to discover the nature of the self, the nature of the human person, namely ourself. What is the self? Well, the Buddha said that the self is a name given to the 5 aggregates. So let's check the 5 aggregates and see whether we can find a self anywhere among them. First, we check the form aggregate. Is my body myself? If the body is myself, then which part of my body is the self? Is it my hair? Is it my head? Is it my eyes, my ears, my nose, my tongue, my skin, my neck, my shoulders, my chest, arms, hands, back, waist, stomach, hips, legs, feet, toes. Can we find an I anywhere among these parts? Look closely. Check from head to toe. See if you can find an I anywhere among the parts of the body. If we don't find an I there, let's go on to the second aggregate, the feelings. Is the I my pleasant feelings? Is it my unpleasant feelings? Is it my neutral feelings? Is there an I anywhere among these feelings? If we don't find an I among the feelings, we go on to the third aggregate, the recognitions or discriminations. Our ability to distinguish between long and short, up and down, hot, cold, and so forth. Can we find an I among these discriminations? If not, we go on to the fourth aggregate, the mental formations. And we check, can we find an I anywhere among these mental formations? The imprints of our actions. Is there an I anywhere among them? If not, we go on to the fifth aggregate, consciousness. Now this is an attractive option. Maybe I am my consciousness. But if I am my consciousness, then which moment of consciousness am I? Consciousness is momentary. We check carefully to see if we can find an I anywhere among these moments of consciousness. If we don't find an I anywhere among the moments of consciousness, then we have to conclude that the I does not exist among the aggregates. So either the I has to exist as one with the aggregates or apart from them. But how can we speak of an I that's apart from the aggregates? It doesn't make sense. And so we're forced to conclude that the I is simply a label. It's a name we give ourselves. It's a convenient fiction. But when we go to try to locate the I, we can't find it anywhere. And so we rest for a moment in this knowing of the no self. When you're ready, slowly open your eyes. Now, another way that we can try to understand the nature of the self is to question whether we are the same self today as we were when we were a child or when we were a baby. What do you think? Same or different? Are we the same person we were when we were a child? No? Are we a completely different person? No. Right. We're neither the same nor different, right? Yeah. Good. Not entirely different, right? There's some continuity, right? In all of these aggregates, there's some continuity of the form aggregate, the feelings, the perceptions, and consciousness. So this is how we check it out through our own experience. The Buddha said, test my teachings until you verify them through your own experience, right? Yeah. Don't take anybody's word for it. So, eventually, when we purify all of our mental afflictions or destructive emotions, then we become liberated from them, simply free from them all. Free from the delusions and the seeds of delusion. In other words, we become awakened. Okay? In the Mahayana, they say that if we don't get liberated or enlightened in this life, then we can pray to go to a Pure Land and become awakened in a Pure Land, where it's very easy to get awakened because, well, there are no distractions, and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas teach the Dharma all day, and we don't have to work, so we can just get on with it. Yeah. So, there are many, many different Buddhas, and we will each become a Buddha ourselves one day, according to the Mahayana. This is Maitreya Buddha, who is the next Buddha. In India, it looks rather different from the one in China, the chubby one. This is the way Maitreya Buddha looks in India and in Tibet. We also have Amitabha Buddha. It's generally red in color. We also have Buddhas in female form, such as Prajnaparamita. We have the medicine Buddha, blue in color. We have lots of bodhisattvas also in the Mahayana tradition. Bodhisattvas are those who are practicing on the path. They have pure renunciation. perfect bodhicitta, the thought of enlightenment, and direct insight into emptiness. 3 qualifications. This is Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion, with 2 hands. This is Avalokiteshvara with 4 hands. This is Avalokiteshvara with 1,000 hands. So the bodhisattvas can take any form they like. A first stage bodhisattva can take 100 forms in 100 world systems. A second stage bodhisattva can take 1,000 forms in 1,000 world systems. The point is to benefit sentient beings. So, to become a bodhisattva is a good thing because it means that we can help lots of people in their understanding of the Dharma. We need to accumulate merit and wisdom for 3 countless eons. Not so easy to become a Buddha. Right? It takes time. Yeah. Now eventually in China, Avalokiteshvara does a sex change. By the 12th century, she becomes a woman, known as Kuan Yin. Funny how that happens. I guess they wanted a female bodhisattva, so she turns into a woman. We also have bodhisattvas such as Tara. She comes in 21 different forms. This is green Tara. This is white Tara. For long life. Or we can just become a generic Buddha. So, okay. So, this is an example of an analytical meditation. We have shamatha, which is calm abiding, learning to concentrate on one object. But we also have contemplations of things like suffering, karma, cause and effect, and the nature of the I. Those are called analytical meditations. And the idea is to gain insight, or vipassana. Right? So, that's the idea. So now, we'll go into our deep listening groups for a few minutes, 5 minutes on one side, and 5 minutes, one partner speaks for 5 minutes, the other listens, and then you switch places. The listener becomes the speaker becomes the listener. So, the question I'd like you to discuss is, what are the most troublesome emotions that you're dealing with right now? What would you like to get rid of? What would you like to purify in your mind? Okay? What are the most maybe troublesome delusions or powerful delusions for you right now? And how are you planning to get rid of them? Okay? Is it good? Yeah? Okay. So, please go into the room of your color and find a partner. Please find a new partner, different from the last time. Okay? And simply listen with full attention.
紅色跟住 Helen 唔該，綠色跟住 Therese。
Now we have about 20 minutes. Oh, sorry. Okay, now we have about 20 minutes for questions and answers, or if there was something you discovered in your discussion groups that you'd like to share briefly, that would also be fine. So, who would like to begin? Yes.
Venerable. I have a question toward the problem of body and mind for a long time. I'm a Buddhist myself, and I know that to Buddhists, there is no problem of mind-body dualism. It's a unity. But forgive me, in my practice, I find my body is not the same thing as my mind. As if when I feel angry, sad. Sometimes I even didn't notice I was breathing. So noticing myself is like I am breathing is a way to get my mind back. I may need my mind or conscious to go to toilet, to reach a cup, but I don't give myself instruction, you need to breathe. But it's constantly breathing. It's like a machine with self-autonomy. So that if I admit that body and mind are in unity, I feel like scary because I lost the last chance to pull my mind back when it gets crazy. So did I understand it wrong, or how should I understand this problem?
I'm not 100% sure I understand the question. But I think that you can pull your mind back to the moment, to the object, without going crazy, right? Usually we have an object of our meditation, especially in the beginning. It's extremely useful to have some object as the anchor for our mind, right? So it can be, if we're doing shamatha meditation practice, it can be the breathing, or it can be an image of the Buddha. If you're a Christian, it could be an image of Jesus. It can be virtually any object, right? And that's meant for single-pointed concentration. So we can discuss more about the process of meditation in terms of bringing the mind back to the object again and again and keeping on the object as long as possible. I think it's important to remember that we're not going somewhere else. We're not going outside the body. We want to maintain our mindfulness as we're meditating, right? So when the mind wanders, then we bring it back to the object. But I don't think that's completely getting to your question. So maybe we can talk more, or do you want to frame it a little bit differently?
My question was, sometimes I was not noticing myself breathing, but it's an action from my body.
Oh, okay, so the breathing can become sort of instinctive, right? Even if we're focusing on a different object, say we're focusing on an image of the Buddha, or we're doing an analytical meditation on what is the I, or some other question, suffering or something, we're still breathing, right? So it's only in Anapanasati that we make the breathing the focus of our practice. Otherwise, we're still breathing, but that's not the focus, that's not the object of our meditation. So that should be fine. Right, make sure that you're breathing, because you want to be right? Don't stop breathing, very important. Okay, but it will be sort of instinctive. You don't need to focus on it unless you're doing meditation on breathing. Then you want to focus on it. Yeah. And you're right that the mind and the body are ideally in harmony, but they're not exact. They're not the same, but they're definitely linked, closely linked. Yeah, that's good. Okay, and we can talk more. So, another question.
Venerable. Last occasion we discussed about slow death and sudden death. But how about when we go to sleep, we don't wake up the next morning?
Very good. Okay.
How can we prepare for that, okay, when we go to sleep? Or do we need to prepare for that?
Well, you don't want to die when you go to sleep. Right. But you're right that there is a link. There is a resemblance between consciousness during the sleep state and the process of dying. So I should say the process of going to sleep and the process of dying are similar in that we're going from a gross consciousness gross level of awareness to a more subtle level of awareness. So when we are asleep, we're not dead. We still have consciousness. Our consciousness is still continuing, but we're not conscious of it. But we can train to be conscious of it. If we do lucid dreaming, or they have the dream yoga, we can become adept at maintaining awareness in the dream state, in the sleep, or the dream state, or the state of sleep. So we do this by training to be aware as we're falling to sleep, right? As in the evening, as we're starting to, first we meditate, and then we lie down and start to be aware of our mind as it goes into a more subtle state of consciousness, right? And that is similar to the state of consciousness that we will experience at the time of dying. And we'll talk more about this next week, too, or maybe, yeah, next week. Yeah.
May I speak in Cantonese? My question is, I know 當我哋身體咧面對死亡嘅時候，有好多痛苦，咁好多法師或者好多知識咧。Okay, maybe I talk back in English. I was told that the brick floor is made of my body. When we're facing the death, we get a lot of painful. How consciousness related to this painful help me be less painful. How the consciousness let me have less painful, and when my dissolving of the brick fall is so difficult to handle.
Would you like to say it in Cantonese also?
Okay. 我成日都被呢啲即係我嘅即係我被教導啦，就係我哋身體咧由4大組成嘅。當我哋面對疾病或者死亡嘅時候咧，4大就會分散。咁就4大分散嘅時候，就會有好多痛苦，身體嘅苦楚。咁至於嗰個 consciousness， 即係嗰個覺知點樣可以幫助我面對嗰個痛苦，讓我可以容易啲去走我死亡嘅道路。
Okay, you're right. Some people will experience a lot of pain during dying. Not everyone, though. Some people die peacefully in their sleep. So they may not feel any physical pain during the process of dying. Other people are not as lucky and may have moderate pain, and some may actually have a lot of pain. So how to meditate at that time? It means that we have to do a lot of practice. As I mentioned last time, during the snake bite, I realized that it's not as easy to concentrate our mind when we're in a lot of pain. So meditation can help us to cope with pain, though. In fact, they're using it in hospitals in the United States. There is something, a practice where we focus on the pain itself. Instead of, generally, if we have some pain, we want it to go away, so we try to push it away. But by tensing up, we often make the pain worse. So I think people may have experienced this. If not, watch it. Watch the next time that you get some pain or a headache or something, and notice that if you worry about it and if you become tense, the pain increases. But if we instead look directly at the pain, sometimes they say making friends with the pain. Instead of pushing it away, it's very interesting what happens. You can see it sort of shifting, because nothing is permanent, right? Sometimes we can feel it actually drifting apart, and it goes away. And when sometimes our knee pain or our shoulder pain, when we're trying to meditate, will be the same. We just look directly at it, and instead of aversion, normally we feel aversion. It's a kind of low-grade anger, to the pain. But instead of doing that, we just relax into it. It can help a lot. So this is one reason that we say that meditation practice is excellent preparation for dying. Yeah, it's not going to make the pain disappear completely, of course, but it will really help. Yeah. Good. So at the moment of death, we want to avoid aversion or attachment. Attachment or aversion. So meditation is great practice, great preparation, as well as everyday life.
We are so lucky to learn before we facing the illness and death. But some patients, when they, at the end of the night, they haven't learned meditation before. For example, my mother. Then how, during the last period of the night, how, as a daughter or a close relative, how can let them knowing simply knowing what doing by consciousness or breathing in, breathing out to reduce their painful. Can?
Yes, can. Especially if your parents or your partner or your loved one is Buddhist, then it's rather easy, because we can actually maybe even take their hand and say, "Mom, would you like to meditate with me? Let's meditate together." And then if they can answer, that's good. If not, we can just continue. Oh, let's watch our breathing. Breathing in, breathing out. Just sort of make it light, but help them meditate by meditating together, right? And we can introduce it like this. And don't have to keep it up for a long time. You can just do it for maybe 5 minutes. But come back to it again and again. If they're open to it, it's very fortunate, very wonderful. But we don't want to continue too long, because, like the rest of us, they might become frustrated. So just do for a short time. Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh does these 3-minute meditations with children and old folks, so it's very helpful. If they're not Buddhists, it's more difficult, but we could also explain it this way. Have you heard in the University of Boston, they use mindfulness for pain management, so you don't have to say Buddhist. People are very afraid of this one, anything religious, right? So that you can use the word mindfulness. And that's why Jan Kabat-Zinn doesn't use the word Buddhist, because he doesn't want to turn people off. And people have some misconceptions about Buddhism, so he just uses the word mindfulness. And he's had excellent results with pain management through mindfulness practice. And they've got statistics and everything. So sometimes you can introduce the idea just in conversation, casual conversation. Oh, I heard mindfulness is very helpful. If you ever want to try, we could just do a little mindfulness practice. Something like that. Yes.
So, how does it, if Dr. let's say we teach Vipassana in the hospital and all that, but
Hello?
Hello, hello.
But without the Buddhist philosophy and doctrine to back it up, so would it get lost in translation?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of it does get lost in translation. But here's the deal, it's kind of a trade-off, because if they called it Buddhism, then a lot of people wouldn't come around. So, on the other hand, I agree with you, and it's a big controversy right now about mindfulness practice, sort of extracting mindfulness from Buddhism, but without the foundations of understanding. So, for example, the ethics. Ethics is the basis of all Buddhist practice. If we're going to meditate, we can check it out in our own life. I mean, the little lies and things that we've told, it really does disturb our meditation, right? So we know that ethics is the foundation of the practice. And the other big piece is compassion, right? The mindfulness trainers don't talk about compassion. But for the Buddhists, that's extremely important, loving kindness and compassion. So, for example, in Japan, the samurai used to practice samadhi. They used to do Zen practice to improve their concentration. But they killed people, right? So they missed the ethics part of it. And that's vitally important. You could be an excellent sword fighter, but it's not good for your next rebirth, for sure. So this is the big question. Yeah, and it's an important one. Right. For the Buddhists, it's all part of an integral whole. It's a package deal. But we don't have to accept all of it. So if it's useful for some people to use mindfulness practice without the rest of it, that's okay too. On the other hand, now we see that mindfulness is being used in businesses and even in the military. So, I mean, you can rob a bank mindfully. You can kill someone very mindfully, but oops, problem. So, yeah, good. What else?
Question there. Okay.
你真係好發達啊！今日
Venerable. The other thing is, my question is, some people get the message, he get the terminal ill. They full of anger, full of complaint. Why me? Then, how we can handle when we are in such situation?
Well, you know, basically we can handle it for ourselves. If we get a terminal diagnosis, it would be very helpful for us to know that we can't really blame it on anyone else, right? Old age, sickness, and death happen to us all. That's the reality. So handling these things for someone else is really not a possibility. Every one of us has to handle our own anger for ourselves, basically. And the time to prepare is long before we get the diagnosis. So all we can do at that point is to try to calm the person down, try to help them sort of shift their perception about dying. It's not a failure. I think because our culture, it's a youth culture. Youth is portrayed as happiness, old age is portrayed as quite grim. So when people get old, when they get a terminal diagnosis, they feel like a failure. We're supposed to live, and live long as possible, and healthy. So when we get sick, or we're facing death, we feel like we really failed. We failed our loved ones. We failed our friends. Or we failed ourselves. But that's a misconception, because, that's why we're here, to recognize and to remember that death is not a failure. Death is normal. Death is natural. At the time of the Buddha, people just died naturally. They still do in India. And the grieving process is really quite realistic. They don't mourn on and on and on, because they recognize that this is part of life. So all we can do in that situation is do our best with loving kindness and compassion for the person. Listen, as we've been practicing. Listen compassionately, deeply to them. And then gradually try to help them understand that this is normal. It's not something bad, right? Sometimes people feel really bad. They feel that they're disappointing everybody. But that's why it's really good that you're all here talking about death now, because it just makes us so much, such a healthy attitude. Helps us be much more reflective and calm when we get those diagnoses, either for ourselves or for our loved ones. Okay. One last question. Okay.
Yeah, Venerable, I have a dilemma, which is you said you just said that we have to meditate about impermanence, non-self, but then at the same time you have to be passionate. Compassion. Compassion is kind of mental state, which is a kind of will it be a kind of attachment if you think all the time compassion, and you have to compassionate to your friend, to your people surrounding you, then that means this is a kind of human to human feeling, attachment. If you cling into this kind of relations at one time because you want to pity on him, because he's poor, you don't want to control this kind of good feeling because you're pitying others and you want to help in all these feelings. But at the same time you contemplate and to get away all these feelings. So will it be kind of contradicting?
Okay, so good. What we've been talking about is purifying the mind of the destructive emotions. So we've been focusing on this because the destructive emotions can cause us to have an unhappy rebirth. If we die in a moment of anger or a moment of great attachment, then it could make our transition difficult. But we can also talk about the positive emotions. There are positive emotions, especially loving kindness and compassion. So loving kindness and compassion, though, is not only for our loved ones. It's for all sentient beings equally. And we'll do this, maybe we can wind up with a short loving kindness meditation. And the whole idea is to meditate on loving kindness and compassion for everyone equally. Now, our normal tendency is to practice loving kindness with the ones that are close to us, our loved ones, or the people who help us, right? If someone does something nice for us, oh, they're our friend, buddy. The minute they don't do what we want, it can change very quickly. But in these meditations, in the Buddhist practice of loving kindness and compassion, we want to share loving kindness and compassion for everyone equally. Now, this is very different from attachment or desire. And sometimes our close relationships are mixed with this kind of attachment. We can check it out because sometimes with our close ones, our dear ones, we have some expectation from them. We love them dearly, but we also have some expectation that they will behave in a certain way toward us or return our love in some way. So that means that it's not pure love. It's not pure compassion. So this kind of loving kindness and compassion for all is not exhausting. In fact, it gives you great energy, really good energy, and we should cultivate it. In fact, we can replace the negative emotions with these positive emotions, especially loving kindness and compassion. Okay. So maybe let's end with a few minutes of loving kindness meditation. Sitting straight, relaxing our body. We send loving kindness to ourselves first. Filling our entire body and mind with this gentle light of loving kindness, pure love. Next, we send loving kindness to everyone here in the room this evening. Imagine each and every one of them also completely filled with this golden light of loving kindness. Expanding out, we send loving kindness to everyone in Hong Kong, to everyone equally, friends, enemies, strangers. Imagine them all filled with loving kindness. Expanding out even further, let your loving kindness reach everyone in the whole world, especially those who are suffering from sickness, old age, suffering from hunger and thirst. Suffering from conflicts, imprisonment, oppression and torture, loneliness, depression. Imagine all sentient beings completely filled with loving kindness. Imagine them happy. Imagine them peaceful. Imagine them free from suffering. So we rejoice in all of the merit that we have accumulated this evening and since beginningless time. We share this merit with all living beings. By virtue of the merit that we have accumulated, may we achieve the state of perfect awakening in order to liberate all living beings from suffering, leaving not one behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable, for another illuminating discussion on the Dharma. Please remember the translation machines at the back in the library on your way out. Name tags, please leave when you leave. Leave them at the reception. And 下一次係星期六28號2點鐘，同埋28號全部係中文，所以啦舒服晒。
四喜男，我哋三文信。
三公公。
一文信，二文信，三文信。我哋恭迎法師下座。